Nathan stepped out of his car, startled by the frantic cries that pierced the still morning air. The desperate sounds made his heart tighten as he crouched instinctively, scanning the empty street. His eyes soon landed on a small figure trembling a few feet away. "Hey there, little one," he said softly, careful not to startle the creature further. The puppy, a scruffy golden-furred thing with floppy ears, panted heavily as though it had been running for miles. Its tear-filled eyes met Nathan's, filled with a desperation that struck him deeply. "Where did you come from, buddy?" Nathan murmured, extending his hand slowly. The puppy hesitated for a moment before scampering forward, pressing its small body against his leg as if seeking comfort and protection. Nathan gently scooped it up, feeling how cold and fragile it was in his arms. That's when he noticed the collar. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, a worn leather band with a shiny metal tag dangling from it. But as Nathan turned the tag over to read the inscription, his breath caught in his throat. It wasn't engraved with an address or a phone number. Just a single word. Oh. Nathan's stomach churned. What did this mean? Who would put such a message on a collar? And more importantly, where had this puppy come from? His instincts immediately went on high alert. He scanned the empty street, looking for any sign of someone searching for the pup, but there was nothing. The road was deserted and there were no footprints or signs of a struggle. The puppy whimpered softly in his arms, nestling closer as if sensing his turmoil. "All right, little guy," Nathan sighed, determination settling in his chest. "Let's get you somewhere safe." Nathan carried the trembling puppy into the police station, its tiny body tucked securely against him. The station was just beginning to stir to life, the scent of coffee and old paperwork filling the air. Officer Jenny Carter, Nathan's partner, sat at her desk, sipping from a steaming mug. When she spotted the puppy in his arms, she raised an amused eyebrow. "Starting a rescue shelter now, Harper?" she teased, though her tone softened when she noticed his serious expression. Nathan set the puppy gently on her desk. "This little guy ran out to me crying. But it's not just that. Look at this." He handed her the collar. Jenny frowned, reading the small inscription. "Help," she muttered, her playful demeanor vanishing. "That's strange. Are you sure he's not just lost?" Nathan shook his head. "No ID. No microchip. No one looking for him. And the way he ran up to me, it's like he knew I could help." Jenny reached out to pet the puppy, who flinched at first but then leaned into her touch, letting out a soft sigh. "Poor thing," she murmured. "He's terrified." Nathan sat down at his desk, setting the collar beside him as he booted up his computer. "I'm going to check local reports, missing dogs, break-ins, anything unusual. Someone left that message for a reason." As Nathan sifted through the database, Jenny grabbed some scraps of chicken from her lunch and a small bowl of water, coaxing the puppy to eat. "You think this is connected to something bigger?" she asked. Nathan exhaled, his eyes scanning the screen. "I don't know. But it feels off." Minutes passed, but the search yielded nothing. No missing dogs matching the puppy's description. No recent reports of suspicious activity in the area. Just as Nathan was about to expand the search radius, Jenny spoke up. "Hey, look at this." Nathan turned as she held up the collar. She had flipped it inside out, revealing something almost imperceptible, a faint series of letters and numbers stitched into the leather. "What is that?" Nathan asked, leaning closer. Jenny traced the delicate embroidery with her fingers. "Looks like coordinates. Let me check." She pulled out her phone, entering the numbers into a mapping app. Her eyes widened as a location popped up on the screen. "It's about 15 miles from here," she said. "Near Pinewood Forest." Nathan frowned. "That's a remote area. Not many people go out there, especially this time of year." Jenny nodded. "You think whoever left this message wanted someone to find that location?" Nathan glanced at the puppy, who had finally relaxed enough to eat a few bites of chicken. "It's possible. Either way, we can't ignore it." An hour later, Nathan and Jenny were driving down a winding dirt road leading toward Pinewood Forest. The puppy, who Jenny had nicknamed Scout, sat on her lap, occasionally letting out a soft whine as if sensing the importance of their journey. The road grew narrower, the towering pine trees casting long shadows over the path. Finally, they arrived at the coordinates. A weathered cabin stood before them, its roof sagging, its windows boarded up. It looked abandoned. But something was off. Nathan noticed faint signs of recent activity, tire tracks in the dirt, a broken branch near the entrance, and a faint glow coming from one of the windows. He parked the car and turned to Jenny. "Stay with Scout. I'll check it out." Jenny started to protest but stopped when she saw the determined look in his eyes. Be careful. Nathan approached the cabin cautiously, his hand resting on the holster of his service weapon. He knocked on the door. No response. The faint glow inside flickered. Candlelight maybe. Or a flashlight. He pushed the door open. Inside the air was thick with dust. The furniture was sparse, an old table, a few chairs and a pile of blankets in the corner. But what caught Nathan's attention was a small wooden box on the table. He moved closer, his pulse quickening. The box was intricately carved, its lock broken. Inside he found several photographs. Each one showed a different dog. Some looked like strays. Others wore collars just like Scout's. Beneath the photos, a handwritten note made Nathan's blood run cold. They're watching. Protect them. His mind raced. Who was they? And what did these dogs have in common? He grabbed the box and hurried back to the car, his instincts screaming that this was only the beginning. Jenny looked up, worry etched across her face. What did you find? Nathan set the box on the dashboard, showing her the photos and the note. Someone's been keeping records. These dogs, they're part of something bigger. Scout let out a sudden bark, startling them both. The puppy's wide eyes were fixed on the woods, his small body trembling once again. Jenny followed his gaze. Do you think there's more out there? Nathan tightened his grip on the steering wheel, glancing toward the dense trees surrounding them. Only one way to find out. Nathan drove cautiously along the edge of Pinewood Forest, following the narrow dirt path that seemed to disappear into the trees. The discovery of the box and the cryptic note had left him with more questions than answers. Jenny sat beside him, holding Scout tightly as the puppy continued to whimper, his eyes darting toward the shadows outside the window. This isn't just about a lost dog, Jenny said, breaking the tense silence. Someone went through a lot of trouble to leave that collar and those coordinates. But why us? Why now? Nathan didn't answer immediately. His focus remained on the road ahead, but his mind was racing. The photographs, the note, the eerie glow in the cabin, everything felt connected, yet he couldn't piece it together. Maybe Scout was meant to find someone, Nathan said finally. And we just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Jenny glanced down at the puppy, her expression softening. Or the wrong place at the wrong time. The road ahead widened slightly, leading to a clearing deep in the forest. Nathan slowed the car, cutting the engine. The sudden silence was almost deafening, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the occasional distant call of a bird. The air felt thick as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Nathan opened the glove compartment and pulled out a flashlight. Stay here with Scout, he told Jenny. I'll take a look around. Jenny hesitated, but she could see the determination in his eyes. Be careful. Nathan stepped out of the car, the flashlight beam slicing through the darkness as he scanned the area. The ground was uneven, littered with fallen branches and patches of moss. His boots crunched softly against the dirt as he moved forward, every sense on high alert. He didn't have to go far. Just beyond the clearing, something made his blood run cold, a small cluster of shallow pits. Each one was filled with discarded collars. Some were old and rusted, while others were newer, the leather still supple. Nathan crouched down, picking up one of the collars. It was engraved with a single word. Oh. His grip tightened. What was going on here? Back at the car, Scout started barking, his tiny body trembling with renewed fear. Jenny tried to calm him, but his cries grew louder, more urgent. It wasn't until Nathan returned, his face pale, his hands gripping the collar tightly, that the puppy finally quieted down. Collars? Nathan said, his voice low. Dozens of them. All buried in pits just beyond the clearing. Jenny's eyes widened. Do you think someone's been hurting these dogs? Nathan exhaled slowly. I don't know. But whatever's happening, it's deliberate. Someone's been collecting these collars and they all have words engraved, just like Scout's. Jenny looked down at the puppy, who pressed himself against her chest, his tiny tail tucked between his legs. What could this mean? Is it some kind of message? Nathan sat heavily in the driver's seat, running a hand through his hair. I don't know. But it's not safe here. We need to get back to the station and figure this out. The drive back to town was tense. The weight of their discovery hung heavily in the air. Scout had finally fallen asleep, his small body curled up on Jenny's lap. Nathan kept his eyes on the road, but his mind was elsewhere. Who had left those collars? And why had they sent Scout to him? As they approached the edge of town, Nathan's radio crackled to life. Harper, this is dispatch. We've got a call you need to hear. Nathan picked up the receiver. Go ahead. "There's been a report of suspicious activity near Pinewood Forest," the dispatcher said. "A local hiker spotted someone loading what looked like animal cages into a van. They took off before we could get a plate number, but they were heading in your direction." Nathan's grip on the steering wheel tightened. "Got it? We're on our way." Jenny looked at him, her expression a mix of fear and determination. "Do you think it's connected?" "I'd bet on it." They found the van abandoned on the roadside, its rear doors hanging open. Nathan approached cautiously, his flashlight illuminating the ground ahead. The area was eerily quiet, the only sound the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. As he got closer, he noticed something that made his stomach churn: several empty cages inside the van. A faint metallic smell lingered in the air, making his pulse quicken. "Police!" Nathan called out, his voice firm. "Is anyone here?" No response. But as he rounded the side of the van, he noticed something even more unsettling: a trail of small paw prints leading into the woods. They were fresh, zigzagging through the dirt as if the animals had been running in fear. Jenny crouched down beside him. They must have gotten out when the van stopped. But where did they go? Nathan followed the trail, his flashlight beam bouncing off the forest floor. The prints became more erratic the deeper he went, eventually leading to a fallen log. Beneath it something moved. A faint whimper. Nathan's breath caught as he carefully lifted the log, revealing another puppy, smaller than Scout, its fur matted and its eyes filled with terror. It let out a pitiful cry, struggling to crawl closer. "Hey there, little one," Nathan murmured, reaching out. The puppy hesitated before dragging itself forward, revealing an injured hind leg. Nathan's chest tightened at the sight. "We need to get him out of here," Jenny whispered. "Now." Nathan gently picked up the puppy, cradling it in his arms. As he did, he noticed something familiar around its neck, a collar identical to Scout's. This one bore a different word. "Say." Nathan swallowed hard. "Jenny, this is bigger than we thought." Just then, a noise in the distance made both of them freeze. Voices. Nathan motioned for Jenny to stay quiet as he listened. The voices were hushed, but he caught bits of the conversation. "We shouldn't have left the collars. It's going to lead them right to us." Nathan's heart pounded. Whoever was behind this was trying to cover their tracks. He looked at Jenny, his mind racing. "We need to move. Now." She nodded, gripping Scout tightly as they hurried back toward the car. The voices were getting closer, but Nathan wasn't about to stick around to find out who they belonged to. As they reached the vehicle, Nathan stole one last glance at the darkened woods. He had more questions than ever, but one thing was clear. This wasn't over yet. Nathan drove with his jaw clenched, his mind racing as he processed what they had just heard. The voices in the woods had confirmed his fears. Someone was behind this, and they were desperate to keep their operations a secret. The weight of the small injured puppy in his arms only fueled his determination. He glanced over at Jenny, who was doing her best to calm Scout while keeping an eye on the dark road ahead. "Whoever they are," Jenny murmured, "they know we're onto them." Nathan nodded grimly. "Which means they'll either run, or they'll try to stop us." The silence that followed was heavy. The road back to town felt longer than before, each passing shadow making Nathan's grip on the wheel tighten. As they neared the station, his radio crackled again. "Harper, this is Delta Unit. We've apprehended 2 suspects near the abandoned van. No sign of additional dogs yet, but we're continuing the search." Nathan snatched up the receiver. "Understood. Secure the suspects and keep me updated." Jenny shot him a look. "Think they'll talk?" Nathan shook his head. "People involved in things like this don't usually cooperate. But maybe they slipped up, left something behind at the van or the cabin. Either way, we'll find out." Back at the station, Nathan carried the injured puppy inside, his mind still reeling from the night's discoveries. The pup whimpered softly, burying its tiny head against his chest as if sensing its new protector. Jenny was already on the phone with the nearest veterinary clinic, arranging emergency care. "They'll see him right away," she told Nathan. "I'll take him over while you talk to the suspects." Nathan hesitated, glancing down at the tiny bundle in his arms. "Be careful." Jenny gave a reassuring nod before heading out, Scout trotting at her heels. Nathan turned toward the holding cells, his expression hardening. He had work to do. The 2 suspects sat side by side in the interrogation room, their faces unreadable. One was a wiry man in his 40s, his face lined with years of hardship. The other was younger, barely in his 20s, but his nervous energy was impossible to miss. Nathan leaned against the table, studying them in silence before finally speaking. "You were found near an abandoned van filled with empty cages," he said evenly. Care to explain? The older man smirked but said nothing. The younger one shifted uncomfortably. Nathan folded his arms. We know there's more to this. We found the collars. We heard you talking in the woods. So why don't we cut the act and start with the truth? The younger man swallowed hard, looking at his companion as if seeking guidance. The older man merely shook his head. You don't know what you're messing with, officer. Walk away. Nathan's temper flared. Not happening. The only way you're walking away is in cuffs or with a deal. Your choice. The younger man looked down, his hands trembling slightly. Look, I don't know everything, he muttered. I just move the dogs. They don't tell me much. Nathan leaned in. Who's they? Where do the dogs go? The man hesitated, then exhaled sharply. There's a facility. About 20 miles west, near the old quarry. They bring dogs there, special ones. Ones that mean something. Nathan frowned. Mean something how? The man's eyes darted toward the door as if afraid someone might be listening. The collars? They mark the important ones. The ones they test. Nathan's stomach turned. Testing? What kind of testing? I don't know, the man insisted. I swear I just drive the van. But I've heard things I don't want to know. Nathan exchanged a look with the officer standing guard. This was worse than he thought. This facility, he said slowly. You know how to get there? The young man hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. But if you go, you need to be careful. They won't let you just walk in. Nathan straightened. We'll handle that part. Jenny met Nathan outside the station, her face pale. The puppy's going to be okay, she said quickly, but the vet found something concerning. Nathan stiffened. What is it? Jenny pulled out a small plastic bag containing a microchip. It was embedded under his skin. The vet removed it and we scanned it for data. This isn't a regular pet chip. It's coded, encrypted. Nathan took the bag, his mind racing. If they're tracking these dogs with encrypted chips, then someone knows we have him. Scout whimpered at Jenny's feet, as if understanding the urgency in their voices. We need to move now, Nathan said, before they realize we're coming. An hour later, Nathan and Jenny sat in an unmarked police vehicle, parked along the outskirts of the old quarry. The facility loomed in the distance, high fences, floodlights, and a reinforced gate. It was clear this wasn't just a kennel. No way we're getting through the front, Jenny muttered. Security's tight. Nathan nodded. We go in quiet. They moved carefully along the perimeter, keeping to the shadows. Scout, who they had decided to bring along, stayed close to Jenny's side, his nose twitching. The German shepherd from the station had also insisted on following them, almost as if he knew his presence was important. Then, just as they were scouting for an entry point, Scout suddenly stopped and let out a low growl. Nathan froze. What is it, boy? Scout pawed at the ground near a section of fence where the dirt looked recently disturbed. Jenny crouched down, brushing away loose soil, revealing something metal beneath. It's a tunnel entrance, she whispered. Nathan glanced around. This could be our way in. Let's move. The tunnel led them beneath the facility. It was damp and narrow, barely wide enough for them to move single file. The deeper they went, the stronger the scent of chemicals and something else, something metallic like blood. Nathan's pulse pounded. We're getting close. A faint whimper echoed through the tunnel ahead. Jenny sucked in a breath. That's a dog. Nathan flicked off his flashlight. Stay close. And be ready for anything. As they reached the tunnel's end, a grated vent gave them a view into a dimly lit room. Inside were rows of cages, each one housing terrified dogs. Some were bandaged, others barely moving. In the center of the room stood a large metal table, covered in papers, syringes, and equipment Nathan didn't recognize. Jenny's grip tightened on his arm. Nathan, what the hell is this place? He didn't answer. He was too busy counting the guards. 3 of them all armed. They weren't just dealing with traffickers. This was something much, much worse. Nathan pressed his back against the damp tunnel wall, his pulse hammering as he assessed the room beyond the grated vent. The 3 guards moved methodically between the rows of cages, their boots clicking against the concrete floor. The dogs inside barely made a sound, their eyes filled with fear and exhaustion. Some were curled up in tight balls, their bodies trembling, while others lay motionless, their chests rising and falling in shallow breaths. Jenny whispered beside him, We can't just sit here. We need to get them out. Nathan nodded. First we need a plan. If we rush in we'll be outnumbered. We need to even the odds. The German shepherd at Nathan's side let out a low, almost imperceptible growl. Scout stayed close to Jenny, his ears pinned back in fear but his body tense, ready. Nathan took a deep breath, his mind racing through their options. If we can cut the power, we'll have the advantage, Nathan said. It'll give us enough time to take them by surprise and free the dogs. Jenny's eyes darted to the far end of the room where a breaker panel was partially visible. That could work, but we need a distraction. Nathan's gaze fell to the German Shepherd. Think you can help us, boy? The dog met his eyes as if understanding and gave a soft huff. All right, Nathan whispered. Here's what we'll do. Minutes later, the plan was in motion. Nathan moved through the narrow passage until he reached a maintenance door leading into the facility's lower level. He and Jenny slipped inside, staying low. The German Shepherd padded silently ahead, his movements precise and cautious. Scout remained tucked in Jenny's arms, his small body trembling against her. As they crept closer, Nathan gave the signal. The German Shepherd let out a sudden, sharp bark and bolted toward the cages, weaving between the guards before darting around a corner. The distraction worked. The guards snapped to attention, their focus shifting. One of them muttered, reaching for his weapon. In the same moment, Nathan lunged toward the breaker panel. He yanked open the cover and flipped the main switch. Instantly, the lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. Shouts erupted from the guards. What just happened? Find the damn dog. Using the cover of darkness, Nathan moved swiftly, his flashlight guiding him to the first row of cages. He pulled out a pair of bolt cutters from his belt and snapped the lock off the nearest one. Inside, a terrified Labrador hesitated, then realizing it was free, leaped forward, its tail wagging weakly. Go! Nathan urged, ushering the dog toward the tunnel entrance. Jenny was already working on another cage, whispering reassurances to the frightened animals as she freed them one by one. The sound of scuffling footsteps told Nathan the guards were regrouping. They didn't have much time. Then a gunshot rang out. Nathan ducked instinctively, his heart pounding. A bullet struck the metal table beside him, sending a loud clang echoing through the room. They're armed, Jenny shouted. Nathan gritted his teeth. Keep going. I'll handle them. He grabbed a metal pipe from the floor and hurled it across the room. It clattered loudly against the concrete, drawing the guards' attention away from the cages. In that split second, Nathan lunged, tackling the nearest guard to the ground. The man let out a grunt as they hit the floor, struggling against Nathan's grip. Jenny continued working, freeing the last of the dogs. Scout barked fiercely, adding to the confusion. The German Shepherd reappeared, snarling at the remaining two guards, keeping them at bay just long enough for Nathan to land a knockout punch on the first. The second guard turned toward Nathan, his gun raised. Before he could fire, Jenny swung a heavy wrench at his hand, knocking the weapon loose. The guard howled in pain, clutching his wrist as he staggered backward. Move! Jenny shouted. Nathan grabbed the German Shepherd and Scout, ushering them toward the tunnel as the freed dogs scrambled after them. Jenny followed, her face flushed with adrenaline. Just as they reached the tunnel entrance, a new voice boomed from behind them. That's enough. Nathan turned, his breath catching. A man in a dark suit stood in the doorway, flanked by two more armed guards. His presence radiated cold authority, his piercing gaze locked onto Nathan. You have no idea what you've just interfered with, the man said calmly. Nathan squared his shoulders, keeping himself between Jenny and the man. I know exactly what I'm stopping. You're done. The man chuckled, shaking his head. You're mistaken. This doesn't end here. It never does. Nathan felt Scout press against his leg, trembling but standing his ground. The German Shepherd let out a deep, warning growl. You'd be smart to walk away, Officer Harper, the man continued. This operation is bigger than you. Bigger than your department. And it's not going anywhere. Nathan's grip tightened on the bolt cutters. We'll see about that. Suddenly, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. The man's smirk faltered as red and blue lights flashed through the facility's windows. Jenny exhaled in relief. Backup's here. The suited man took one last look at Nathan before stepping back into the shadows. We'll meet again, officer. Then just like that, he was gone. The following hours were a blur of police officers, animal rescue workers, and chaos as the remaining guards were arrested and the dogs were taken to safety. Nathan leaned against the hood of his patrol car, exhaustion washing over him. Scout curled up beside him, his tiny frame finally at peace. The German Shepherd sat close, his watchful eyes still scanning the area. Jenny joined them, handing Nathan a bottle of water. We did it. Nathan nodded, looking over at the rescued dogs. Yeah. But this isn't over. That man, he'll try again. Jenny frowned. Then we'll be ready. Nathan glanced down at the German shepherd. You sticking around, buddy? The dog let out a low, contented huff, pressing his head against Nathan's leg. Jenny smiled. Looks like you've got a new partner. Nathan exhaled, feeling the weight of everything they had uncovered. The underground operation, the dogs being used for something sinister, the unknown forces still out there. But as he looked down at Scout and the German shepherd, his new allies in this fight, he knew one thing for certain. They weren't giving up. Come on, buddy, Nathan murmured, scratching behind the shepherd's ear. We've got work to do. As the sun began to rise over the town, Nathan knew their fight wasn't over. But together they would face whatever came next.